All right, get ready, because today we're going deep on AstraZeneca's Q4 2024 earnings call.
Ooh, sounds exciting. What do we have on deck?
We're going to unpack some impressive numbers, ambitious goals, and even a little international drama. Let's kick things off with a highlight reel. AstraZeneca had a truly stellar year in 2024. Their total revenue skyrocketed by a remarkable 21%.
Wow, 21%. That's massive.
And their core EPS climbed an impressive 19%.
Those are some seriously strong figures. What's driving that kind of growth?
Well, it's multifaceted. They've seen robust growth across all their therapy areas and across key geographic regions. And get this, a bunch of their medicines have actually achieved blockbuster status.
Blockbuster status, huh? That's music to any pharma company's ears.
For sure. Take Tagrisso, for example, their lung cancer treatment.
Yeah.
That one exceeded $6.5 billion in sales.
Whoa, $6.5 billion. That's huge. Are there any other big hitters in their portfolio?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We've got Lynparza, their PRP inhibitor. That one hit over $3 billion.
Wow.
And then there's Imfinzi and Enhertu, their immunotherapy duo. Combined, those brought in almost $5 billion.
Impressive.
Oh, and let's not forget Calquence and Enhertu, each surpassing the $2 billion mark.
So it's not just one or two drugs carrying the weight. They've got a whole team of all-stars.
Exactly. And that diversified portfolio, that's a key part of their strategy and a big reason why they're feeling so good about their future growth prospects.
Makes sense. Diversification is key for mitigating risk and creating a more stable revenue stream. Speaking of interesting markets, what's the latest on China? They've been making some pretty big moves there, haven't they?
Absolutely. They saw really impressive growth in China for the majority of 2024, but then Q4 hit and things took a bit of a dip.
Oh, what happened there?
Well, there are a few things at play. You know how hospitals manage their budgets and orders toward the end of the year?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that impacted sales for some key products, like Tagrisso and Farxiga, their diabetes treatment.
Interesting. So it's more of a timing issue than a demand issue.
Precisely. Plus, they had a milder winter this year. Meant less demand for their respiratory medications like Pulmicort. So a few factors contributed to that 3% decline in Q4.
Sounds like short-term fluctuations rather than a long-term trend.
That's how they're framing it.
Yeah.
But got to address the elephant, or maybe dragon, in the room.
Oh, right. The ongoing investigations in China.
You got it. The Shenzhen City Customs Office is looking into suspected unpaid import taxes for Imfinzi and Enhertu, totaling $900,000.
Oof. That's not small potatoes.
No, it's not. And if they're found liable, they could be facing fines ranging from 1 to 5 times that amount.
That'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
And there's a chance it's not just those two drugs. Enhertu, their blockbuster breast cancer treatment.
Yeah.
There's a possibility it could get pulled in too because of similar import practices.
So there's a bit of uncertainty hanging over their operations in China.
Definitely. But even with these hiccups, AstraZeneca is feeling pretty optimistic about their future, especially with 2025 shaping up to be what they're calling a catalyst-rich year.
Catalyst-rich? What does that even mean?
Well, for starters, they're expecting results from some major trials for some of their existing blockbusters, like Enhertu, Datroway, Imfinzi, Breztri, and Fasenra. And even more exciting, they're expecting the first phase 3 data for 7 brand new medicines.
7? That's huge. Their R&D engine is firing on all cylinders.
It is. And among those 7, 2 names you want to keep your eye on: Camestrant and Baxterastat.
Ooh, those sound intriguing. Tell me more.
So Camestrant, that one's a potential best-in-class oral SI for breast cancer.
Now, for those of us who don't speak fluent pharma, what's a SARD?
Fair enough.
Uh-huh.
SR stands for selective estrogen receptor degrader. Basically, it's a new kind of hormone therapy that's showing a lot of promise.
So potentially a big advancement in breast cancer treatment.
Exactly. And then we have Baxterastat, which is a novel aldosterone synthase inhibitor for hypertension and kidney disease.
Whoa, targeting 2 major health issues with one drug. That's ambitious.
And lucrative. Both of these have the potential to generate over $5 billion in peak revenue.
Yeah.
If all goes according to plan, of course.
So we're talking serious blockbuster contenders here.
Absolutely. And these new medicines are just one piece of their big plan to reach $80 billion in revenue by 2030.
That's a bold goal. But given their track record and their pipeline, maybe not totally out of reach.
By early 2026, we should have a much clearer picture of if they're on track to hit that target. But it's important to remember that no journey is without its bumps in the road.
True enough. What kind of headwinds might they face in 2025?
Well, there's a trifecta of challenges brewing. The Inflation Reduction Act, IRA in the US, VBP in China, and the patent expiry of Brilinta, their blood thinner.
Sounds like a recipe for headaches.
Could be. Let's break it down a bit further, starting with the IRA. This legislation, specifically the changes to Part D, which is the prescription drug benefit for Medicare beneficiaries, it means increased manufacturer liability for drug costs.
So it's putting pressure on their bottom line.
Exactly. But there might be a silver lining to this. It could lead to improved patient adherence and less reliance on free drug programs, thanks in part to that $2,000 copay cap.
So a double-edged sword potentially impacting both costs and access to medication.
You got it. And then there's VBP in China. Stands for volume-based procurement.
Ah, yes. The Chinese government's program to negotiate lower drug prices.
That's the one. It's putting pressure on drug prices in one of AstraZeneca's key growth markets.
So they're facing challenges on multiple fronts.
That's right. And then on top of all that, they have Brilinta's patent expiry looming, which means more competition from generic versions, likely going to eat into their market share and revenue.
It's like a chess match, trying to anticipate and navigate all these different moves.
Precisely. But even with all these challenges, AstraZeneca is still optimistic about continued growth in 2025. New indications for existing products and the sheer momentum of their current portfolio are expected to fuel that growth.
So they're playing both offense and defense, focusing on innovation and growth, but also managing these external pressures.
Absolutely. And here's what's really interesting. They're not just focused on the short game. They're making major investments to fuel growth beyond 2030.
Now that's forward thinking. What kind of investments are we talking?
We're talking cutting-edge stuff. Antibody drug conjugates, bispecific antibodies, T-cell engagers, cell therapies, and oligonucleotides.
Wow, those are some serious tongue twisters. But more importantly, they're at the forefront of medical innovation.
Exactly. They're not just chasing the next blockbuster. They're building a foundation for the future of medicine.
It's like they're getting on the future of healthcare itself.
You could say that. And it's a bet that could pay off big time if these technologies live up to their potential.
This is a fascinating story unfolding. Ambition, challenges, the promise of groundbreaking medical advancements.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So we've covered a lot. AstraZeneca's 2024 was a year of phenomenal growth. They're poised for continued success in 2025. But they've also got some major hurdles to overcome. It's a high-stakes game, and we'll be watching closely to see how it all plays out.
I'm on the edge of my seat already. What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Well, before we jump into the nitty-gritty of their financials and individual business units, I think it's worth taking a closer look at some of the key statements made during the earnings call itself.
Excellent idea. Let's hear what the CEO and other execs had to say about their performance, their strategy, and their outlook for the future. So let's dive into some of those key takeaways from the earnings call itself. What were some of the highlights?
Well, CEO Pascal Soriot, he described 2024 as an amazing year for AstraZeneca, and rightfully so. He pointed to that impressive revenue and EPS growth as clear indicators of the company's momentum.
It definitely seems like they're feeling pretty confident about their performance. Did he touch on their strategy at all, like how they plan to keep that momentum going?
Oh, absolutely. He emphasized their focus on operating leverage.
Which, for our listeners who maybe aren't finance whizzes.
Right. Good point. Operating leverage essentially means keeping expenses under control as revenue climbs. He highlighted the 14% growth in operating expenses, which is significantly lower than their 21% revenue surge.
Smart move. It's not just about growing revenue, it's about growing it sustainably. Did they address the elephant in the room at all? The investigations in China, I mean?
They did. So Soriot addressed it head on, emphasized that they are committed to transparency. Disclosing everything they learned about the investigation, particularly anything that could point to financial liabilities.
Transparency is definitely key in situations like this. Helps build trust with investors and stakeholders.
For sure. He also encouraged analysts to seek independent legal advice, specifically from firms that have expertise in Chinese law, just to, fully understand the implications of the whole thing.
Makes sense. Got to be cautious, especially with something as complex as the Chinese legal system.
All right. Okay, so enough legal talk. Let's dive into the financial details. CFO Ardana Sarin, she walked us through the numbers, and there is a lot to unpack.
Hit me with the highlights.
Well, their net cash flow from operating activities, that increased by a solid $1.5 billion in 2024. Capital expenditures, those are pretty much in line with expectations. And they closed a few business development transactions, including acquisitions.
Sounds like they're being strategic with their capital, investing for future growth.
Exactly. And looking ahead, Sarin outlined their guidance for 2025, projecting total revenue growth in the high single digits and core EPS growth in the low double digits.
So another strong year on the horizon, but didn't you mention some headwinds they might face? Things that could impact their margins?
Right, you're talking about the IRA, VBP in China, and Brilinta's patent expiry. All those are expected to put some pressure on their product sales gross margin.
Not an ideal combo. What's their plan to counteract all that?
They're really banking on their growth momentum. They believe it'll more than offset those headwinds. It's a bit of a balancing act for sure, but they're confident that their diversified portfolio and their pipeline will help them navigate those challenges.
It'll be interesting to watch how that plays out. Okay, let's break down the performance of their different business units, starting with oncology. Key takeaways there.
Well, Executive Vice President Dave Fredrickson, he heads up the oncology business, and he painted a very positive picture. He highlighted that several of their key medicines, like Tagrisso, Lynparza, Imfinzi, Imjudo, Calquence, and Enhertu, those all achieved blockbuster status and saw some pretty impressive revenue growth.
So oncology is a powerhouse for them.
Absolutely. And it's not just about their current products. They've got a really strong pipeline of new oncology treatments in development. Those should drive growth in the coming years.
What are some of the big ones to watch in 2025 and beyond?
Fredrickson highlighted Tagrisso, Enhertu, and Imfinzi. He's expecting new indication approvals and launches for those, which should fuel revenue growth.
But can't forget about those headwinds we talked about, especially the IRA and VBP in China. How are they planning to handle the potential impact on their oncology drugs?
Fredrickson emphasized that they see the IRA as manageable. He pointed to a few factors that could offset the increased manufacturer liability under Part D. Things like improved patient adherence, lower free drug use, and new growth opportunities in 2025.
So they're not hitting the panic button just yet.
Not at all. More like a wait-and-see approach, but with a healthy dose of optimism.
I like it. Okay, let's switch gears. Biopharmaceuticals, how'd that segment do in 2024?
Another strong performance. Ruud Dabber, he's the head of biopharmaceuticals. He reported a 21% revenue increase to $21.9 billion.
Whoa, 21%. That's a huge jump.
It is. They saw strong growth across all their key therapy areas: respiratory and immunology, cardiovascular, renal and metabolism, CVRM, and rare diseases, pretty much firing on all cylinders.
It's impressive. Biopharmaceuticals is really becoming a force within AstraZeneca.
For sure. Their respiratory portfolio especially, that's been doing really well. Symbicort, that remains a steady performer, and Fasenra and Breztri are gaining traction quickly. Oh, and they also have a new respiratory blockbuster, Tezspire, which contributed significantly to that growth.
So oncology isn't the only driver of their success. Biopharmaceuticals is pulling some serious weight too. But what about 2025? Given those headwinds, what are their expectations for this unit?
Well, despite some potential challenges, like Brilinta's patent expiry and VBP in China, they're still anticipating continued growth in biopharmaceuticals for 2025.
Okay, so what are they banking on to drive that growth? What are the key areas?
With Dabber, he highlighted a few things. They're expecting further growth from Farxiga, their SGLT2 inhibitor for diabetes, and Lokelma, their treatment for hyperkalemia, plus continued strong performance from their respiratory portfolio, Symbicort, Fasenra, Breztri, and Tezspire. They're expecting big things from those.
So they're playing to their strengths and exploring new opportunities. Nice balanced approach. Now let's talk pipeline. What's on the horizon for biopharmaceuticals?
Now that's where it gets really exciting. Sharon Barr, she leads biopharmaceuticals research and development. She gave us a sneak peek at their pipeline, and it's packed with potential. They're focusing on expanding the use of their existing medicines, like new indications for those, plus developing completely novel treatments for a bunch of diseases.
Sounds exciting. Any specific examples? I always love to hear about the cutting edge stuff.
Oh yeah, plenty. So in respiratory and immunology, they're looking at expanding the use of Breztri, their triple combination inhaler. They want to see if it can be used for asthma. And then there's Fasenra, their IL-5 monoclonal antibody. They're studying that for COPD, which is a major unmet medical need, by the way.
Right.
And then there's Tizaracumab. That's their IL-33 monoclonal antibody, also for COPD. They're really excited about that one.
Wow, it's like they're trying to corner the market on respiratory treatments with a multi-pronged approach.
You could say that. They're going after it from every angle, really trying to meet the needs of all those patients with respiratory diseases.
Okay, what about CVRM? What's brewing in that pipeline?
They're super excited about Baxterastat. That's their new aldosterone synthase inhibitor. They're expecting phase 3 data for that one, both for hypertension and kidney disease, later this year. Baxterastat has major blockbuster potential. and could really give them a solid foothold in the CVRM market.
Exciting. And what about their rare disease portfolio? Anything new happening there?
Marc Dunoyer, he's the CEO of the company AstraZeneca acquired back in 2021.
Right.
He gave an update on their rare disease business. They saw some strong growth in 2024, driven by Ultomiris, their long-acting C5 inhibitor. It treats a bunch of different rare diseases.
Impressive.
And they're expecting even more growth in 2025, driven by new indication approvals and launches. It's a good time to be in the rare disease game, apparently.
It sounds like it. So what's next for them in this area?
Dunoyer highlighted some pretty cool pipeline developments. They're expecting 5 phase 3 readouts in 2025, including 4 for brand new molecular entities. These trials, they're targeting a bunch of different rare diseases and could significantly expand their portfolio. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening over in the rare disease world.
It really seems like AstraZeneca is firing on all cylinders across all their different business units. But with such ambitious growth plans and in such a rapidly changing industry, there are bound to be challenges along the way, right?
Oh, for sure. It's the pharmaceutical industry. There's never a shortage of obstacles.
No kidding.
Yeah.
But it sounds like AstraZeneca isn't just reacting to these challenges, they're actively preparing for them.
Exactly.
Investing in new technologies, expanding their global footprint, and building a really diverse and resilient portfolio.
That's what gives them that edge in this crazy industry.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here. AstraZeneca's 2024 was a remarkable year, and they're poised for even more success in 2025. But they're not slowing down. They're innovating, expanding, adapting to the ever-changing landscape. It's exciting to watch.
Like a game of chess, isn't it? Anticipating their opponent's moves, strategizing their next steps, high stakes, high reward.
Love that analogy. But with all this information, the big question remains. Will they hit that ambitious $80 billion revenue target by 2030?
The billion-dollar question. We've looked at the data, we dissected the expert opinions, we've explored their strategies. What's your verdict?
Honestly, it's too early to say for sure. They definitely have a strong foundation, diverse and robust portfolio, a promising pipeline, a clear growth strategy, but those headwinds, the IRA, VBP in China, Brilinta's patent expiry, and the potential for pricing pressures in Europe, those are serious challenges.
So it's a race against time. Can they outpace those challenges and achieve their goal?
Only time will tell. But one thing's certain, this is a company that's not afraid to take risks, to invest heavily in innovation, to push boundaries in medicine. They're a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure.
Okay, so before we wrap things up completely, I think it's time for our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, ready to cook up a crazy yet plausible trade idea based on what we've learned, of course.
Always. Hit me with it.
Okay, so AstraZeneca is making some pretty bold moves, right? Going all in on these new transformative technologies. But Wall Street, well, they're obsessed with short-term gains. They always are. So I'm willing to bet that the market isn't fully pricing in the long-term potential of these investments that AstraZeneca is making.
Interesting.
So here's my play. Buy AstraZeneca stock now before the market catches on. Then buckle up and enjoy the ride as they potentially blow past those 2030 targets.
Okay, that's a spicy one. I like it. But remember, folks, this is purely hypothetical. Don't go making any investment decisions based on our crazy ideas.
Right. This is just us having some fun, speculating.
Yeah.
Exactly. Always do your own research. Talk to a financial advisor. Past performance, it's not a guarantee of future results or any of that.
Couldn't agree more. Do your due diligence, people.
Absolutely. But it is a fun thought experiment, right? I mean, AstraZeneca is a company that's not afraid to shake things up. They're pushing boundaries, aiming for the stars. Whether they hit that $80 billion target or not, they're definitely a company to watch. It's pretty amazing to see how AstraZeneca is setting themselves up for the future. They're not just happy being a leader now, they're trying to shape what healthcare will look like in the future.
Bold strategy for sure, and not without its risks. But their commitment to innovation, that diverse portfolio they've got, and their global reach, all that gives them a pretty solid base to build on.
I agree. It's like they're playing 3D chess or something, anticipating future trends and making moves to take advantage of those emerging opportunities.
Speaking of strategic moves, that investment they're making in those new technologies, that could really change the game. It's a long-term play, but if it pays off, it could revolutionize medicine as we know it.
Imagine, diseases like cancer being treated with personalized cell therapies, or genetic defects being corrected with gene editing. It's mind-blowing to think about.
Definitely makes you think about the potential impact these technologies could have, for patients. But got to acknowledge the ethical side of things, too.
Right, of course. With any powerful technology, there's a responsibility to make sure it's used ethically and for the benefit of everyone. It's an ongoing conversation, one that needs to include scientists, policymakers, ethicists, and the public.
For sure. It's a complex landscape, but one that AstraZeneca seems to be navigating pretty well.
Their focus on sustainability is also important, both in terms of their financial performance and their environmental impact. They're not just chasing profits, they're trying to make a real difference.
It's nice to see a company that's thinking about the bigger picture. I think that long-term success is about more than just the numbers.
It is. They're aiming to create value for everybody, not just shareholders. A much more sustainable approach.
So where does all this leave us? We've talked about AstraZeneca's amazing performance, their goals for the future, the challenges in their way, and their bold strategies. What's the big takeaway for our listeners?
I think it comes down to this. AstraZeneca is a company on the move, always innovating, adapting, pushing the boundaries in healthcare. They're one to watch, not just for their financial performance, but for how they could actually change the world for the better.
Well said. And remember, everyone, this deep dive, purely for informational purposes. This is not financial advice.
Right. Always do your own research, talk to a financial advisor, make informed decisions based on your own situation.
That's right. We're just here to provide insights and get the conversation going. Ultimately, the decisions are yours. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AstraZeneca. Hope you found it helpful and interesting.
Yes, thanks for listening.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and remember to invest wisely.